Yo, 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 it's your girl and boy CT. I'm Cindy Barnes.
And I'm Travis Barnes.
And we are the founders of the Overcomers Podcast.
The Overcomers Podcast is designed to help you overcome adversity and live your dreams. Every week we will be sharing stories of people who found their strength in their struggle. The Overcomers Podcast is sponsored by Journey 333, and that's a lot of threes, so let me tell you what it is. It's fitness, coaching, and nutrition. It is a place where we help you to look better, live better, and feel better, and it is mind, body, spirit. Today, we're going to help you get your mind right with our special guest.
Hello, Overcomer Nation. I am Cindy Barnes.
And I'm Travis Barnes.
And we're the founders of the Overcomers Podcast.
All right. Today, we have a special guest in the house, and it's an amazing story. She's a true overcomer. Let me ask you this, Overcomer Nation. Are you doing the job that you were meant to do? Are you living the life that you want to live? On today's show, Diana Alt is going to tell you about how losing a loved one was the catalyst to figuring out the life that she always wanted. Diana Alt is a no BS executive coach and a career growth strategist. She's an overcomer, and I just can't wait for her to share her story with you. So Diana Alt, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Travis and Cindy. It's great to meet you. I love what you're doing here with this podcast because
thank you.
So many people just feel like they got beat down and that's where they have to stay. And I am not a believer in that. So
you're an overcomer. You're an overcomer.
Yeah, I guess. Sure. I'm in the nation. Is there like a passport for Overcomer Nation? No. There's the merch. You need some Overcomer Nation passports.
That's awesome. I like that. You won't have to get some passports. We'll print them for people, right with the shirts, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Overcomer Nation passport. Well, Diana, your story is, the thing that you've overcome, if anybody overcomes it, is being widowed. This is losing.
At 34 years old.
Yeah, at 30.
Like way young. I was 34 years old at the time.
Definitely way young. Wow. Can you maybe take us to that time in your life, because it became the catalyst for a big shift in your life, and maybe we can start our story there if you're okay with that.
Yeah, we sure can. So back in 2009, which feels like 100 years ago, it's about 3 presidents ago. That's one of the ways I explain it to people. I was married. I'd been married for about 2.5 years to a man named Andy. Phenomenal human. It always seems like it's the phenomenal humans that have their life cut short. But Andy in 2009 was diagnosed with brain cancer. So it was very unexpected and it was very sudden, and he never even got to start treatment before he actually passed away. So there had been all these issues with dizziness and, brain fog and all the kind of stuff that I guess goes along with having weird cancer stuff growing in your brain. And we had been trying for a few weeks to sort it out. He had to have a biopsy, and the diagnosis came back with a very aggressive form of brain cancer, usually found in children that are like 5 years old or younger. And he was 40 at the time. So really, really strange stuff. And at the time that he got diagnosed, or right before that, he and I both had been working in highly stressful jobs in IT, in environments that were negative. We worked at different companies, but we dealt with some of the same stuff of, lots and lots of politics, lots and lots of toxicity. I experienced very aggressive bullying from some women that I worked with, and tons of overtime. Like, we were not spending our time together as a couple because we were spending our time at the office more than we should have been. And immediately before Andy went into the hospital to have this surgery, he actually had just gotten an offer for a brand new job working with some people that he'd worked with several years before. So like, he was on the path of, I'm escaping the ridiculousness. I'm getting out of this situation. I'm going to go work with my good friends. And then boom, cancer. So, and in my case, I had also a few weeks before that finally left the bad job, got a much better new job. So we were on this uptick, and we felt like, yes, life is great. We're going to have our, we're going to get our time back. We are making more money. We can start planning to have kids, like all that kind of stuff. And then it all got cut short a few short weeks later, whenever he had a seizure and died right before he was supposed to start training or supposed to start chemo and treatment.
Wow.
So yeah.
Mm.
That was one of those period. You ever have like the period of time where it seems like it's a condensed period, but it's stretched, kind of like those first few weeks of the pandemic felt like 5 years.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
You know, like that was my life. Only I was the only, you know, me and my husband and our family were the little bubble that was experiencing that while the rest of the world was going on more normally. But it was a few week period of time that felt like months and months and months. So
yeah, you know, 34 years old, you're
he
widowed.
was 40. Mm-hmm.
You were 34?
I was 34 and he was 40, and we'd been married
40.
for 2.5 years.
So young to leave this world so soon, and so young for you to be widowed. And I'm sure, you know, I've been in those moments of tragedy where, you know, 60 seconds seems like, you know, 60 minutes or, you know, 60 hours. And so I can only imagine how life just kind of slowed down and, you know, made you wonder, you know, what's happening to me and where am I going to go with this? But you describe it as being the catalyst. In fact, you know, we talked about that, how, you know, as we brought you on the show today, how losing a loved one can be the catalyst to figuring out what you want to do. And, you know, what were some of those thoughts as you began to work your way through all those phases of grief that you must have gone through that, you know, led you to where you are today?
Well, you know, one of the interesting moments that happened was there was about 3 weeks between when we finally got the diagnosis back from my husband's brain biopsy and when he actually passed away. And I'm a person of action. Like, I've had a long, successful career doing a lot of big things. You know, I feel like I always have something going on the side, some projects, like I'm doing stuff all the time. And so my attitude was like, okay, well, the doctors say we're going to do this and this is how we're going to do it. And he was on board with the whole thing. And so we were working our plan. And for the most part, I do optimism. So I'm not Pollyanna, but I'm like, if we're going to do this, we're going to have a good attitude about it. And so mostly I felt like this is beatable. We can do this. We can work this plan. And then there was this one day, though, where I just didn't feel like this was going to pan out the way that anybody wanted. And so I went to the hospital, which was just like 5 minutes from my house. I went to the hospital and was hanging out with my husband that day. And I told him, I said, I don't know how to do this if this doesn't work out. Like, I have this really bad feeling today, like you're not going to make it through this. And my exact words were, I feel like if you don't make it, the last day of your life is the second to last day of mine, because I can't do this. Like, I don't know how to function.
Wow.
And he looked at me square in the face and said, that is the stupidest shit I've ever heard in my life.
Wow.
And so he said, your job is to live and to live well, whatever that means for you. So don't worry about what the family says. Don't worry about anything. But that's your job. And he also said, if you truly feel that way, call my brother-in-law and get the guns out of the house. Because, you know, he's like, I don't want you having, like, you know, we don't want to have the weapons in the house. We want to keep you safe, whatever. But he's like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Your job is to live and live well. And one thing that's really unique with younger widows is that they often don't have that conversation.
Yeah.
Younger couples think they're going to live forever.
Yeah.
Even people in their 30s and 40s think they're going to live forever. So I had a conversation that most people do not get to have. And so that sat in the back of my brain. And what was wild is the next day I woke up feeling again like, okay, we're doing the plan. Like this, here's what we're doing. We're working this plan. And then that conversation, though, was very important a few weeks later when he actually died, because he had a seizure, ended up in the ER, you know, doing the CPR things that they do in the ER when you have a seizure and your heart stops and all of that. And after they called him and pronounced him dead, like, they take you to a little room in the hospital when bad stuff is going on, because they want to get you out of the regular waiting rooms. They don't want you upsetting any other patients or patients' families or things like that. And I was literally in the little room where they take you after that, curled up on the floor in the fetal position, and weirdly by myself for a short period of time. So, because there's people in and out, but I had this moment where I was by myself and I was lying on the floor in the fetal position, and I vowed to have an awesome life. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I didn't even know what it meant, but I knew that that was what I was supposed to do. So the conversation had happened. And then the worst had happened, and I had to make a decision in that moment. And I am not convinced that I don't, hopefully I would still be here, but I don't think that I would have done the things that I've done in the 13 years since then. I don't think I would have helped the people that I've helped. I don't think that most of what I've done lately would have happened if I hadn't made that decision in that moment.
Wow. What was your husband's name again?
Andy.
Wow. I mean, your story gives me chills,
Good. I did it right.
Yeah, well,
that's the goal. Like we're here to make people feel stuff, because you don't make decisions. You don't make decisions that you need to make if you don't feel. You don't take action that you need to make if you don't feel. You want to think too, but most of us spend far too much time thinking and not enough time feeling. So.
Well, I mean, I just think that Andy is a real hero of this story. He responded to your pain in such an honorable way, telling you that your job was to live and live well. And I don't know, I'm a spiritual person, as I said. I don't know whether Andy's spirit got to touch you in that room as you had that moment, but it's interesting what is happening with Andy in one room, that he's leaving this life and going on to the next, and that you're getting this moment of what I'll call divine inspiration, because now you go on to change lives and teach other people how to live well in their careers, right? So amazing. And so that was you determined that your job was to have an awesome life. And I don't even know how many times that I've said to myself, and I've been in some low states. I do not want anyone to think, oh, she made that decision and everything was fine. No, it was not freaking fine. No, that was the decision that helped make things okay in really bad moments, or made there be the potential to dig myself out. And there were times when I had no clue, and all I could say to myself was, I made this promise to myself. I don't know how to do it, but I can't stop trying. So. Wow. So where did you go from there? I mean, I know that there was obviously a period of time, for mourning and working your way into a new life, but you not only helped yourself into a better life, but you're helping others. So tell us a little bit about that journey, if you would.
Yeah. So I've been coaching people actually since before this whole thing with my husband passing away. So this is where I think before we started recording, I said, Andy's death was a catalyst to finally pursue some things, but some of it had already had the seeds planted before. And back in 2004, I got my first management position, that very first shiny you're the boss position in a company. And what happened was I took the part of my job as a manager to help people develop their careers really seriously. And most people don't do that. Most people are focused on supervising their staff to do the tasks. And I was working in IT with a pretty educated staff. Like, they didn't need supervision. They were responsible humans. So I was more interested in, how do I make sure these people will stay happy in their career and they have an opportunity to grow? Because I've always been a person since I was really small that wanted to try new things, learn new things, do new things. And I really liked that part of my job. And my director at the time was like, you're the only one of my managers that's actually operating this way. And I was his newest manager too. And I took it to the degree of, it wasn't just about upskilling so that you can do the job on my team better. If someone on my team wanted to apply for a job at a different company, or a job, in a different department, and that was the best thing for them, like, I was their biggest cheerleader in trying to make that stuff happen. So I've always been really interested in people having the opportunity to just thrive at work, because I've always identified with my work, sometimes too much, I would say, but I just feel like we spend too many hours of the day on our profession. Like, work shouldn't suck. So let's make sure the work doesn't suck. It should feel good. And then from there, I kept on serving people free, like, I was a part of some professional organizations here in the Kansas City area where I live. And I remember big time frame where I started to get more and more interested in coaching people was during the Great Recession. So that whole 2008-ish collapse, which was like a year and a half before Andy died. There were a lot of people that got laid off, and a lot of people in my specific area of professional expertise were getting laid off because project managers and business analysts are what I worked with. And they were some of the first ones cut in the recession because, like, you can't write code without a developer, but we can muddle through managing the project without the project manager if we've got to cut some people. And I just really enjoyed helping people understand that even though we were in a recession, that doesn't mean that you have to put up with BS at work. It doesn't mean that you have to put up with BS in hiring. And it doesn't mean that you have to pretend, like, it doesn't make it a good idea for you to pretend to want something that you actually don't want whenever you're in the job market. Mm-hmm. So I was doing, informal mentoring and sometimes presentations and workshops and things like that, either on my own or with other people. And I really loved it because there were people that in the middle of one of the worst economic situations we had seen in my career, they were managing to go find jobs that they liked. They were managing to get raises. They were managing to be happier at work. After my husband died, I actually took a pause. Like, all I could really do for a while is just like tend to my own needs. So show up to my work, do as good of a job as I could. There were a few months when I was really glad that they let me keep my job that was very new, because I feel like, you remember the line in Office Space where Peter Gibbons says, I do about 15 minutes of actual work a week. Okay. So I felt like I had a lot of periods that were like that, but it wasn't because I was disinterested. It was just because I was not really functioning yet. So I spent some time focused on that and just trying to come back from being numb. And then by about 2012 or so, I was back coaching people again. And that's the point where people started saying, like, can I give you money? I was like, what? You want to give me money? Like, is that a thing? I didn't know that was a thing. I just knew that I help people. And so I started taking a couple of clients here and there. Meanwhile, I'd also started poking around at some other things I was interested in. So, I'm not the fittest person in the world, but I did work out with a trainer, and I actually started doing CrossFit in about 2011. And I hate it. Like, everybody hates it. Like, yeah, right. If you love CrossFit, something's wrong with you. But I didn't, like, from a workout modality, I was like, this sucks, but I don't really like working out anyway. So I'm just, might as well do this with the people that I like. But I got into CrossFit judging.
Wow.
So, I had this weird, strange path where, I was over 200 pounds, but I was like judging elite CrossFitters, which that community lets happen, which is one of my favorite things about it. So I had this weird lane where I was planning CrossFit competitions locally in Kansas City. And I was judging the best of the best of the best at like world championship level. And I liked it. It was just like, that never would have happened.
Well, but to me, it really fits who you are. And it's a great part of your journey. We have, the topics today are very applicable to our audience. Most everybody who's listening is employed. I know that we have some young listeners, and I know that we also
eventually they'll need it. The young ones will need a job eventually.
Yeah, right.
Or they'll need to start their own business. So,
but I think it's just, you're doing what you're meant to be doing, and everything that happened in your life, including marrying Andy and losing Andy, brought you to this point in your life to where, you could apply your discerning abilities, to help others, right? And or judge a CrossFit competition, right? I like what I read about you, where it says she believes work should feel good, not like a long, slow march towards oblivion. I like that. And then you also help people identify ways to update their work in their current jobs and businesses to align with the life they want. So I am curious, for our audience's sake, as I just mentioned, most everybody that's listening is employed. Yeah. Maybe they feel like, their work really isn't in alignment with the life that they want.
Oh, buddy, that's my favorite thing. I mean, it's not my favorite when it happens to people, but helping people with that is my favorite thing to do.
Yeah. So it sounds like sometimes you just kind of help them to, this is interesting, because to me, I'm a business owner, and sometimes I've encountered where I might have people either leave the gym looking for one that's a better fit, or maybe I'll have somebody even leave employment that's looking for something that's a better fit. But I had one time when I was going to church, I had a pastor say, everybody keeps going and looking for a better church instead of trying to make their church a better church. And I thought about that. And I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful, right? Like, I mean, because you are like the church there, and you are your business. Like the members are the club, right? So sometimes we're searching for something externally that if we made a few changes internally, that it could actually be what
that's totally true. And like, I'm gonna recommend a book for people. I hope you will put it into like your show notes or whatever.
Sure, I'm taking notes.
So one of my favorite books about that is called Do Over, and it's by John Acuff. And it's like, John Acuff is one of my favorite authors. I've read pretty much every book the guy has ever written. And he first started off his career with this like weird little blog called Stuff Christians Like, where he kind of poked fun at like big mega churches and some of just the silly things that are part of church culture. But over time, he's gotten into like personal and professional development and helping people with things like reframing how they feel about work, or building businesses, or goal attainment. And the book Do Over was very interesting because when I first picked it up or first heard of it, I thought it was going to be a book about how to start your career over somewhere else. And instead, it was a book about how to figure out how to start over whichever way that you want to. Because there's a lot of people that are trapped working for like a crappy boss, or in a job that they've outgrown, but in a company they really like. And they feel weird about trying to fix that. They feel weird about having the conversations with their boss to say like, this doesn't work. Can I go apply to be in the marketing department? Like they just feel very uncomfortable with all of it. And so any tools and resources or things I can personally do for people that help them go have that conversation or identify that for themselves, I find really important. And a lot of times when I'm talking to people, like the last 12 months or so, I had always really tightly aligned my coaching work with people that were in corporate. But I've also had small business owners coming to me saying, I have this job that I don't like right now, and it's my company that I own. Like I'm working too much in it, or my team is not right, or I want to go to the next level of growth. And so I've ended up doing some work with people in that category too. But I'm a big believer that like really great work has 4 pillars. Jot this down, folks. So the first pillar is you're doing the right work. You are doing work that challenges you, that interests you, that you can find yourself in a state of flow. It is enough challenge that it's fun, kind of fun, and you're learning, but it's not so hard or so over your head that you feel like you're set up to fail. So right work. For me, I like to analyze stuff and I like to work with people. So in my IT career that I had for 20 years before I went full-time into coaching, I always found myself on the line between the technologists and the business people. So it was like a secret decoder ring, and that was really good for me. And so much of what I do as a coach is that same kind of thing. I just don't focus on technology projects anymore. I focus on other stuff. The second pillar is the leaders. So for most people, the most impactful leader is their direct boss. So if your boss is an ass, you're going to have trouble. But really what you want from the right leader thing is 2 things. Number 1, a boss that's the right management style for you. So a lot of people like to talk about, oh, you never want a micromanaging boss. You know what? When I was 23 years old and I was in my very first job, I wanted a lot of supervision. I wanted a lot of time with my boss. I needed it. That was something that was important to me. And different people based on personality might need a tighter relationship with more guidance for their boss. Other people are like the Ronco rotisserie grill. It's like, set it and forget it. Just tell me what to do. Check in with me every couple of weeks and we'll go. It doesn't matter what the answer is. What matters is, do you have a match? And then the second layer of leadership is the executive team that you're working for. So if you're in a real small business, that may be the same. The CEO may be your direct boss. But if you're in a bigger company, if the strategic direction of your company is a hot mess, then you're going to have trouble even if your leader is good. Can you imagine being a person that was working at the last few Blockbusters? It's like the whole Blockbuster never did anything to try to pivot. They basically let the company die off. So you could have had the best store manager ever, but you're not renting any movies. It's demoralizing to be in that situation. Right. So that's the right strategic direction. Then you have the right environment. And that is all, again, about how can you fit your life and your work together. So one key thing is, are you being paid fairly for the market? A lot of times people hear, well, we can't afford such and such. Well, a company that truly values their employees is going to figure out how to build a business where they can pay people what they're worth. It might be a bit of a journey, but you're getting fair pay. That's like table stakes stuff. You're also getting the benefits that you need. Some people don't need any because they have a spouse with great benefits. Some people need the best Cadillac health insurance ever because they have really bad medical situations. Again, doesn't matter. And then there's things like, is the level of formality at this job appropriate? Are we all kind of at that gritty, sitting around the card table in the garage doing our tech startup thing? Or is it a more formalized, bigger, more structured kind of environment? And can I do the things that I want to do in life? Do I have enough PTO? Do I have enough flexibility? Flexibility has been the whole conversation for the last 2.5 years in the pandemic, but it's always been a thing. So that's environment. And then finally is culture. So everybody loves to throw around, this has a great workplace culture, this culture is toxic, but nobody ever actually manages to define what culture is. And culture, I define as values in action. So pretty much every company, whether it's on the break room wall or on their website or something like that, they have a few core values that they've listed, but not very many of them actually live by their core values. And so when I'm working with clients that feel like they have a culture mismatch, I want to understand, first off, how much overlap do you really need between you and your business? Like it's a very personal thing. Some people are just like, I'd like them to not kill and steal from people. Other than that, I don't really care what the core values are. I just want them to not be diametrically opposed to mine. Other people want it to be really tight. So a lot of people that are in the fitness culture, a lot of people that are, working at churches and nonprofits, they want tons of overlap between values. But then also, like, how are those values lived out? You can't sit and say that you're an inclusive environment if you don't have policies that back that up. And if your leaders are not on a day-to-day basis, kind of showing that that's important with their actions when it really counts. So that's the deal. So I work with people a lot that'll come to me and be like, I love my work so much. And then when I dig in, I find out the only thing they like is the actual work, which takes up the most time in their day. But when you dig into it, I had a person tell me this recently, and I looked at him and I said, buddy, your job is 75% wrong. Mm-hmm. So this job that he'd stayed in for years, underpaid, burning out because he was working overtime all the time, boss that didn't appreciate him, all that stuff. He was staying in it because he, quote unquote, loved the work. And when I said, your job is 75% wrong, within 90 days, he had mobilized and gone to find a job doing very similar work for 35% more, less hours, the whole 9 yards, because now he knew, what holes do I have to plug in? So
this is a really great topic. Because I think that there's many people that are in a job that maybe there's some things that they don't like about it, but they don't really feel empowered to do anything about that. So your recommendation into how they might begin to assess it, and then of course from the assessment can come the plan, is to look at those 4 pillars, which are, am I in the right type of work? Do I have the right leadership? Like, meaning, am I a match with my leadership? And of course, if it's a bigger company, is it moving in a direction I want to follow? The right environment, the level of formality, the different benefits and things such as that. And the culture, looking at, how we live it out. So once they've assessed that, let's say that they have an issue with the leadership, but they like the work, they like everything.
Let's do the simplest scenario.
Okay.
Because you can't, most people don't have the ability to change the strategic direction of a big company. So let's say their issue is like, everything's good, benefits are good, I'm paid well, like most of the culture seems really good, I like my job, my boss and I do not gel. We just don't. You got to talk to the boss.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what adults do.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you are going into a process to talk to your leader about how you feel like the working relationship is not what you need and try to turn the ship, you have to get really specific about what it is that you need that you're not getting, or you can't have a constructive conversation. You also have to be open to the notion that they might need something from you that you're not giving, and be open to that feedback. And the way I always tell people when there's any kind of conflict like this is, instead of framing things as me versus my boss, or, Travis versus Cindy, or whatever that is, instead think about what's the objective and try to put both of you on the same side of the problem.
Okay.
So what your boss needs is a team that carries out the work effectively and that ideally gets along, and you can throw more projects out later, like basically a functioning team that is pretty happy, that people aren't constantly quitting, and that high quality work is happening. That's what your boss wants. So if you frame any conversation with your boss of, I think that I will be a better team member, or our team will be better if we do X, Y, and Z, what do you think? That is way better than you're a micromanaging jerk.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's very combative.
You see what I mean? Like, you're a micromanaging jerk. And so I actually have a worksheet that I do with a lot of my private clients that helps outline, what is it that my client is the best at? Like, you get the best of me whenever XYZ is going on. You get the worst of me when XYZ is going on. And you can always count on me to do, these things. And so a lot of times they will fill out this worksheet, walk into a meeting with their boss saying, my goal is for us to work well together. I wrote this stuff down. Could you write down the same stuff? And then we could have a conversation about how we can make this be awesome. It's a whole different way of having the conversation than what most people do. Most people are very comfortable framing themselves as the victim.
Mm-hmm.
And in some, and I don't mean to dismiss, some people are victims. There are bosses out there that are toxic. There are bosses that are out there that you can't do anything right for. There are people harassing. There are people that are literally incompetent to lead others. That's not what I'm talking about, though. Most people want to do a good job at work.
Yeah.
And so if you at least try to start with that, then you can oftentimes have those conversations that make everything better. And then if you decide to leave, if you decide you have to leave a company that you loved, at least you tried.
Yeah.
You don't ever have to feel like, you just ran away.
So good. I love that I love that you have a formula that puts people on both sides, the same side of the situation. Yeah. I think that that's awesome. I mean, it seems like every pillar that you've addressed today, I mean, it's obviously the right work is fixable by, in some companies, making a shift.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the office, but I want to be on the floor. I'm in the floor, but I want to be in the office.
Yeah.
Whatever the case might be, you can ask for those types of things, or right work might be leaving a company. Culture. Do you have ways that you advise people on how to influence their own culture? Because culture is so dependent on the people.
So culture is the hardest one for a lot of people, especially if they're in a big company. But I read here's another really cool book to write down and put in the show notes. It's called 9 Lies About Work.
9 Lies?
9 Lies About Work.
Okay.
And so this book, the authors researched a bunch of things that we always hear about work, like, what company you work for matters. Well, one of the things that they found is that a lot of times, even in matters of culture, the team you work for matters more than the culture that you work for. In other words, there's like a high degree of variability between teams or departments in a big company into how well culture is lived. So if you work in a department where it seems like the leadership maybe doesn't get the value that you want the most improvement in, then that could potentially be another reason to pursue moving to another team or another boss, or trying out something new, because, hey, I want to learn more about what it's like to be in a team that truly does value this thing that I value. So.
Yeah, I think you're so right. Because one, sometimes you could even work for a company and, I like their values and I like maybe how they live them out. But then I get stuck with, my main coworkers, they kind of they dump on me, and that doesn't seem to be like
there's always that one guy.
Right.
And I know I've probably been that one guy, but sometimes you just have to figure out, because the 5 or 10 people that you work the closest with, like that's 90% of your day for most people.
Sure.
And so sometimes the way to get more exposure to a better culture or a better environment is to transfer. That can be really hard for some people in certain roles, but I spent a lot of my career in tech and I didn't really care what product I was building. It's great when you get to know a product and the market really well. That's all fantastic. I was a product manager for many years. And if I decided to go back into corporate, I probably would work in either marketing or product management because I really loved it. But if one product team has a lot of people that have gone really negative, or that I feel like are not valuing the same things that I value, or whatever else is contributing to the environment being poor, then I can go work on another product. Like, might take a little while to transfer. I might have to wait for an opening, but that's an option. And I've seen people do that. So I have worked with a lot of clients that came to me because they wanted to do, hey, help me with a job search strategy. I want to dust off my resume. I definitely want to leave Acme Corporation. And then when they really dig into what they like, they find out, oh, I could transfer to this new division. And then they are happy as clams for a long time. I just had someone that I was very surprised that's on my client list that emailed me to say he was going to be interviewing for an internal role. And I did not ever think I would hear him say that. And he's super excited about it. So, yeah.
Very cool. All right. So I like the fact that we started off someplace I didn't really expect us to be, which is, you don't have to leave your work. Sometimes the answer is to, instead of looking for a better job, make your job a better job. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's awesome. Then there are those that you're helping, Diana, that need to understand what their ideal work was. In fact, what I read about you was that you help people identify ideal work for them and execute an effective job search strategy, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that I'm listening to this podcast, Overcomer Nation. Let's say that I'm listening to this podcast and I'm like, I don't know if any of those 4 pillars will work for me. I just don't think I'm doing the right thing. Maybe it's time for a shift completely. Where do they begin?
So where they begin, I do think that really sitting down and getting very specific, whether you journal it out or, do voice notes to yourself or hire a coach or whatever it is that you do, but you go get really specific about what is and isn't working in those 4 pillars. So you have to see where you're at before you can start to move forward. The GPS has to know your starting point before they can tell you how to drive to Disney World or wherever the heck it is that you want to drive. And then what I like to do with people, especially on finding what the right work would be, one thing that is a real pet peeve of mine is that so many career coaches, they just go have people take a million assessments that spit out job titles. And my background in tech is so fast moving that if someone developed an assessment 3 years ago that spat out job titles, well, there's like 50% new job titles now anyway, so it's not relevant anymore. So what I do is I work with people through a process where we dig into their stories and we dig into their talents. So the only assessment that I use is Clifton Strengths. I'm a certified Clifton Strengths, or Strengths Finder is how a lot of people know it, coach. And
she's a wooer.
I'm a wooer.
Are you a woo?
And I forget what I am.
Guess what I am. This will be fun.
I'm action oriented. I don't stop at red lights or something like that. I forget that.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. So you're a woo. Well, I like to work with people on like, when were you happy at work? So there's a lot of writing, or if people prefer to like record a little video, but I want them to process information about what is and isn't working for them. So I have people write stories up about, when were you really happy working on something? And for some people, if they've hated their job for years, they might have to think about like a volunteer activity that they did, or a project they put on at their church, or something else they did. I've had people figure it out from jobs they had in college 25 years ago, what they should be doing now. And then look at talents. And then there's a strong networking component a lot of times to what I do. So whenever I'm working through things with people, we start with the whole universe, and then we narrow down based on what people like. And then when we get to a certain point where we have a few options, I will very often suggest people go find someone that does that job, and go find some people that hire for that job, and come back and tell me, do you think that that's suitable for you? Well, you can do, I mean, like, it's great to have a coach, and I love working with people, but I can only work with so many at a time. You can do this yourself.
Right.
And then basically the most important thing, though, is to throw away everything that you have been holding on to, and just for a hot second, be open to the idea that the answer might be that you're going to move from being a CPA to a yoga instructor. I've never had anybody do a change that was that big, but if you at least allow yourself to dream for a little bit, then it can be really helpful. And once we get some of that information, together, we start getting our arms around what people like to do. Then we start applying practicality to it. Like, okay, yeah, you found out that this is a job title you're interested in pursuing. Are you going to have to go to school for 6 years to do it? Because if you're telling me that you want to be a doctor, we also have to find you something to do while you're going to go get qualified to be a doctor. You've got to have an interim plan. Or if you're telling me that you want to do something that only makes $25,000 a year and you have 5 kids and you're single, like we have to put reality on top of it. So I work people through this process in one of my programs, and they come out with 1 to 3 job titles to pursue, and then actually be able to target their job search. So often we hear people that are desperate to get out, but if they've been laid off, they'll feel desperate. Or if they're in that situation where like, I just got to get out of here, I'll take anything. When's the last time you saw a job posting that's had the job title of anything?
Right.
Experience, we don't care.
Job title, anything, experience, we don't care.
Literally, that doesn't exist.
That's great.
So I'm trying to take people through a process where they can get to a goal that they can put their arms around and then move forward.
I'm going to ask you a question, and maybe you have an example of it in your own life. But I think that often we're misled, when we're first born, like that's the closest to probably who we are that will be for a long time, right?
I love that. That's true.
I mean, right? Because we're just we're looking around the world, and we just have feelings about the world, and there are our own feelings, right? But then we grow up, and there's expectations put on us. You'll do this, and it could be the views of your peers or parents or whomever those influencers are in your life, and you may find yourself way off track. You may find yourself as a CPA when you were meant to be a yoga instructor, right? But do you have any stories about that, or any methodology as to how to kind of break free from that for those that are just so they've been doing what everybody else expected them to do?
There's a couple of things, and honestly, I work with a lot of people that are in their 30s, 40s, and usually early 50s. They're still kind of on a career growth thing. They've got a long time to retirement. They're not just trying to ride 3 more years before they can collect their Social Security. So there's a couple of different ways I have people think about that. Number one is I am a big fan of the side hustle. Mm-hmm. Huge fan of the side hustle for a few things, for a few reasons, and not even necessarily about money. So one of the reasons I love people doing a side hustle, whether it is starting their own thing or whether it is working for somebody else part-time, is that you can build skills and try out things that you were interested in a low risk way. So if I had to do it over again, I would have either taken part-time work or maybe even tried to do a full-time transfer into marketing before I went full-time in my own business, because I found that I did not know enough about marketing. And in this kind of digital coaching world space that I live in, most of what the online business coaches try to teach you is not marketing, it's sales. It's all about the funnel, right? So if I would have spent some time learning marketing, I would have been much better off. And I'm actually taking the time to do that right now. And so I'm going back and rethinking a lot of things in my business and how I approach, the world with my business. So you can do the same thing to scratch an itch. So if you're the CPA that thinks you should be a yoga instructor, keep your cushy, like well-paying CPA job, stash as much money as you can, go get your yoga teacher certification and start teaching yoga.
Yeah. Try it out.
And then, so you can try it out. Mm-hmm. And then while you're stashing that money, you can figure out, can I live on less? Can I figure out how to scale up a business? Is there something about me being an accountant and a yoga instructor that's special? And maybe I turn that into a thing that nobody has ever even thought of before. But yeah, right? Like, yeah. You just made a really good face at that one, Trev.
Yeah, well, because, I know that the more narrow the niche, often the better off you are, because, there's something that nobody else is doing. It's not especially if there's going to be a good demand for it. There might not be a good demand for doing it.
Is there something special? Like for me, I started out, like one of the things in my career, there's a lot of people that work in HR and recruiting that like to crap on career coaches that haven't been in recruiting. You can't possibly coach anybody. Well, here's the thing. Yes, there are things I don't know, but I also can learn. Like that's one of my top Clifton strengths. Number 2 is learner. And so what I choose to do is put the recruiters and the HR people on the same side of the problem as me, because we all want people to be happier at work. So one way for me to do that is to actually listen to the expertise of the recruiters that my clients are going to have to deal with at some point in the process. So that's kind of one of the things that I do. So I just look for opportunities to learn. Mm-hmm. And I suggest to my clients to take opportunities to do things on the side, or if it's not quite so far apart as accounting and yoga, ask for opportunities to do something different. There's honestly a lot of people, especially if they're in like full-time corporate knowledge work jobs, which is mostly what I work with, marketers, software developers, project managers, product managers, that kind of stuff. A lot of them can really shift their work more than they think they can by having the right conversations with their leaders, or by kind of banding together with their whole team and saying, well, this detailed administrative stuff, Cindy loves that and she crushes it and I suck at it. So, but I'm really good at some of the strategy and like customer interview stuff that Cindy just hates. Like, can we realign our jobs a little bit and let Cindy lean into what she's good at and let me lean into what I'm good at? Those kinds of things can happen too. And even if you are in a situation where you want to exit a company, how much benefit is there for spending 6 months in a current team trying to get a little more skills in something that you want to be a major part of your next full-time job?
So good. So good. This is really awesome information for our audience. And, you're clearly doing what you're meant to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that a lot of like what you help people uncover is their passions, right? Just like, this, what are you passionate about if you just feel like, so lost at where you're at, like, is it that yoga thing or whatever it might be? How do people get to work with you?
How do they get to work with me? Oh, this is my favorite question. So I'm primarily doing one-on-one coaching right now. The best way to get a hold of me is you can email me at diana@dianaalt.com. So you can put that in your show notes, or you can go to my website, which is dianaalt.com, and go to the contact us page. That's another option. I'm also all over LinkedIn. So I post content, LinkedIn and Facebook right now are my primary platforms with a little side of Instagram. I'm a Gen Xer, so I joke that I'm too old for Instagram, but you can find me on any one of those platforms as well. And just shoot me an email and let me know what your question is. And then depending on what's happening, I may have you book a call with me, because I basically do a free call to figure out what's happening with you and are we a good fit for coaching. That program I described where I take people from like, the world is your oyster down into 1 to 3 possible job titles. That's like my favorite program to do with people. But I also have programs to help strategize job searches and things like that too. So I get on the Zoom with people, figure out where they're at, which one they need, and then we go from there.
There it is, Overcomer Nation. So if you're looking to maybe make your job a better job, or looking to just find out what the heck you're meant to do, maybe you should reach out to Diana. I won't say maybe, I'll say reach out to Diana. Any final words for our Overcomer Nation, like such as, life is too short not to be doing what you love, or what do you tell people?
That's really good. I like that one. So I'll let you have said that one. Here's the thing I'll leave people with. What you want matters. I think so often we are, especially parents, we are like, we got to keep the kids happy. We have to keep the boss happy. We have to keep the spouse happy. We got to keep the friend happy. We are focused on everybody else except for what we want. And you sure do not want to get to be 40, 50, 60, 80 years old, never having done anything that was for what you wanted to do.
That's so good. That's so good. Well, Diana, thank you for being an overcomer, and thank you for being on our show today.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening, Overcomer Nation. Make sure if you haven't already, give us a 5-star rating. Make sure that you share this and subscribe so you can see all of our future content.
That's right. And if you'd like to be a guest on a future show, go to overcomers-podcast.com. If you're interested in our franchise opportunities with Journey 333, then go to www.journeyfitness333.com. And finally, if you like what you heard today and you feel like you're somebody that needs a bit more coaching, go to travisbarnes.com.